Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on effective communication for students. I'm so glad that you were able to join all of us today, including myself. My name is Dr. Rebecca Spielman, and I will be guiding you through today's webinar. As you notice, the image that's on this first slide is that of honeybees swarming together at a hive. And what's really fascinating about bees, particularly honeybees, is each of them has a purpose and how they communicate. Even with all of the buzz happening around them, they know what their job is and they know how to communicate with one another with each of the combs that are being built within the beehive. I want you to keep that in mind as we work through today's webinar. And I want you to think about first, how do you communicate with others on a daily basis? So oftentimes I think about, and I still truly do believe, that face-to-face communication is essential. It's part of what makes us human and makes relationships very important. We must also realize that at a distance relationships and communication are also important. And in today's world, we have this opportunity to find balance, hopefully, with both. As we think about how we communicate, we also must think about how do students communicate. As we're entering into a new academic year, it's really, it's really essential for us to not only think about how they communicate face-to-face and at a distance, but also how we can help model and guide for them some skills through activities that I'm going to share with you today that will hopefully create a more efficient, engaged, and effective communication occurring in your classrooms, no matter if they're face-to-face or at a distance. So I want you to think about, and you can pause this webinar at any point, what challenges we face when teaching others about effective communication. I came up with a few, but I was hoping you could also share yours. The challenges that I see happening today when we communicate with others are things like group dynamics. It can take only one individual to change the dynamics of a group. And we can either allow that to happen or we can redirect and create a stronger community within our group for better group dynamics to occur. And in a classroom, no matter face-to-face or at a distance, this is essential. Secondly, we are challenged with a lack of time to effectively communicate. Sometimes we only have a few minutes or even a few seconds to text someone, to send an email, to place a phone call, or to have a Zoom meeting. We must also realize we have face-to-face time that is also being taken away in some manners right now, that we lack the time to have face-to-face communication. And again, I revert back to the sense of community and of human relationships and the need that we really need to create the sense of community face-to-face and at a distance in today's world. Sometimes we have people who just have a lack of interest or engagement in communicating. And I know all of you as parents and teachers and students, we all sense when someone's not really paying attention or engaging with us in communicating. And because of that, there's a lot of miscommunication or lack of communication that can occur. So we just have to make sure that we're teaching our students and working with our families and working with our schools, the idea that there is an interest and a need for engagement. We need to make time for these relationships occur so that we can effectively continue to communicate or begin to communicate. And in some points, there's a lack of respect. And this I'm not going to even talk about from one angle or the other, but we need to create a sense of respect for each other, to be kind, to look for problem solving, not problem causing solutions, and really just to respect each other. We can agree to disagree, but we need to do it with civility, is what I say. We need to be civil about those things. And we need to model that for students and for our young people. And lastly, one thing we have to realize is there is a possibility that there's a lack of understanding in how we communicate with one another. We live in a global world with many cultures and traditions and beliefs and values. And our vocabulary even leads us to sometimes having a misunderstanding based on what someone says or doesn't say. And just the concept that we need to know our audience and know our purpose, and teaching our students that they need to know themselves so that they can share with others so that we can create this effective communication we're all seeking today. And finally, there are honestly a lack of resources. A lack of resources in the classroom, in the community, at home, and with all of the technologies that we have. Sometimes we lack resources because we have so many that we don't have the funding to put them all together. Sometimes we lack understanding of resources. Overall, if you look at this list, things that are creating issues or challenges for us are the lack of. So we need to focus on creating balance and connecting with time, interest and engagement, respect for one another, understanding one another through our culture and our community, and what resources we need and want to have to effectively communicate. So what can we do to help our students become more effective communicators? I have a list of several things that I think we can, as teachers and parents, do. I also feel that there are some things that we can have our students learn. So this list is for all of us, and then I'm going to next go into some activities. So we should be a good role model in our own forms of communication. Whatever forms of communication we use, we should model how to effectively use them. In some cases, we need to educate ourselves. Secondly, we need to interact with students in a professional, approachable manner. We are not going to create this personal environment that's not having the ability to be professional, because we're now, with all of our at a distance classrooms, in each other's homes in some cases, and we need to make sure we keep our professional life professional. But we still need to be approachable. But make sure you aren't being too personal, because as professional educators, that is our job, to be professional. And we need to model that for our children and our youth, because they're going to be professionals and adults in a very short amount of time in a global world. So what we're teaching them, if we're teaching them in an online environment, we're modeling for them something they may not have experienced before in an academic setting. We need to do a very good job of being professional but approachable. We need to infuse our classrooms, no matter in person or at a distance, with communication activities. So years ago, everyone was considered to be a writing teacher and a reading teacher. I'm telling everyone, I believe everyone needs to be a communication teacher. It does not take away from the role that an English language arts teacher plays, but we use communication every day in every way. So we need to build communication activities in to our classroom, to whatever discipline or content area that we teach. And we need to help students learn how to problem solve, not just give them the answer or tell them that their answer is correct, but have them use higher order thinking to understand, to be able to learn how to problem solve, because that gives them resilience and confidence in themselves to be able to do something and be a problem solver, not necessarily anything like a problem causer. There are people who cause problems, but that's because they don't know how to solve problems. They haven't thought through that process, and they haven't learned that skill. And that's something that we can all do as parents, teachers, communities. Students together can become problem solvers. And we need to build a sense of community of learners. And that is critically important in today's world. So let's talk about modeling effective communication. We need to do things like gain perspective if we want to be able to show students how you become effective as a communicator. We need to gain perspective of others. We need to have a goal in mind when communicating. And all of these I'm going to touch on in just a few minutes. So I'm just going to kind of go through them, but I want you to think about this. Gain perspective, have a goal in mind when communicating, okay? Do not let emotion overtake you. Be purposeful. Create a safe environment to communicate, be it a classroom, be it at work, be it talking with teachers, family members, community members, co-workers, colleagues, friends. We want to create a safe environment for conversation to occur. We want to work on small talk about non-sensitive topics to develop this relationship and the sense of a safe environment. And we want to research and learn about others in our conversations. So by doing so, we listen to understand, not just to respond. We seek to problem solve, not to problem cause. We take on the role of the other person or people in our conversation. And that's a lot of the ability to self-reflect. We are so quick to communicate that we don't often think through what we're saying, sending, posting. We want to take on the role of the other person, the receiver of the information, before we send whatever that message might be. And we want to set some basic communication parameters. Let me say that again. Set some basic communication parameters. We want to be proactive, not reactive, but we don't want to overwhelm with so many rules that people don't even want to talk, okay? I love spelling and vocabulary, but I've come to realize I can seek to understand if someone doesn't spell a word correctly or use the word correctly. We need to make sure we're speaking with our audience in mind, not ourselves, okay? And when I say that, that doesn't mean we give up our self-identity and our perspective, but we sometimes need to stay focused on who we're communicating with first. So here are some student activities that help you hopefully develop effective communication skills in your classroom and in your community. Again, these are just a few examples, and you can certainly stop the video and jot some things down. I am keeping it kind of open-ended. I have actually used all of these in my years of teaching at some point or another, and that's kind of where they came from as I thought about how to teach effective communication the world that we're living today. So, as I mentioned some goals before. I mentioned the goal of having the ability to gain perspective. And I believe we need to have students who do this early on. And we need teachers and parents and community members to be able to do the same thing. So as a classroom teacher, I created an activity called Complete or Who Am I project. So I would say, have a Who Am I project for your students to complete, and you yourself as a teacher to complete for your class. Students will research and gather information about their interests and perceptions. They can talk about things that are important to them, things they value, things they might dislike. Obviously, you're going to set the parameters for the age appropriateness of the group that you're dealing with. And this process will begin to have them self-reflect, but also share out with you and with whoever else you may have them share this project with, the ability to gain some perspective on why they think or act or react the way they might in your classroom. The outcome is to gain information that will help you build a sense of community and culture in your classroom. A Who Am I activity is a great start for the school year. Secondly, oops. Hold on one second. Make sure it goes. We should make sure we listen first to understand, then seek understanding from others. Okay, so a lot of times a student will begin talking and we will shut them down. Or you'll start talking and they'll jump right in. And parents do the same thing and teachers do the same thing. We need to be able to listen first, be patient, let the other person finish, then come back and possibly follow up with a question. So those of you in the audience who may have taken a class in group dynamics or in counseling of some sort, you remember probably saying, so I think you're saying, or it seems you feel that. Those sentence starters, I know we went through those activities. They somewhat come into play with this goal, okay? So before you rush to judge someone or something or an occurrence that happens, particularly when it's at a distance, you need to seek to understand first. Listen, get both sides of the story, or however many sides there are, and then seek understanding from others for whatever it is that you're asking. An activity that I came up with that works really well for this, and this has a lot to do with self-regulation in the classroom, was a 3-2-1 action self-reflection project. And in this case, the students recorded themselves or would record themselves using audio and video devices. It depends, again, on your tools and resources you have available and the age of student you're working with. But basically, they complete a self-reflection, and you can create these questions for them. Things like, when I get upset, what do I usually do? When other people talk before me, how does that make me feel? Okay, so there's a lot of questions about what students do as they react and how they feel about certain situations. They basically record themselves, and as they record themselves, just like I will do after this webinar, I'll watch my behaviors and my mannerisms. And they can watch one another if you allow them to most likely pair up for this and have a very good tool for them to give each other feedback. That's positive, constructive feedback, okay? So they'll interact with other students by sharing what they've learned about themselves, and they'll also gain some self-identity and management of behavior, actions, and reactions. So facial expressions, mannerisms, word choice, how long they allow for wait time as they listen to other people. All of those things come into play that will be part of your classroom and how you'll manage your classroom. So it's effective communication skills. But again, it's not you saying, and this is what I expect, and this is what I expect, and this is what I want to see. It's having them take on ownership of themselves, or if they're not yet owning themselves, at least acknowledging and becoming aware of some of the things that you might have to point out to them at a distance or even face-to-face in your classroom. Okay? The third thing I have as a goal is do not let emotions take over. Have students choose positivity. We will have issues occur in class, face-to-face or at a distance. Students will be challenged by one another, by content, by deadlines, all the different stressors they may have in their life. We need to have them understand that attitude is always their choice. They need to stay focused on what is good, especially in today's world. Always try to think of things that are good to share with them. Look for something good in each day. And how you act and react are always your decisions. Teach your students that. Teach them to go back and look at their self-reflection activity. You might have them do a self-reflection each week or each day. Depends on the student. Depends on your classroom. It depends on your group dynamics. So these aren't one and done type of activities. You could have them continue to do them. They could be written, they could be oral. They're using communication skills either way. They can be face-to-face, they can be at a distance, they can use artwork to show you some of these things. It's really up to you as the classroom teacher how they can show you what they know. But it all comes back to how they communicate that with you and with their families and with their friends and their community. Fourth goal, be proactive, not reactive. And the activity that I have with this is now what? So the process is students will be given a current age-appropriate issue, something you know that is happening or probably will happen or might end up happening and you never thought it would happen in your classroom. And they have to work together with at least 2 other students to create a problem solution plan. Because for every problem, there's a solution. And I did this activity even with my college students who were in teacher education to come up with this proactive idea of what's the biggest challenge you think you're going to face as a new teacher and how are you going to solve it? So same process for your students, for yourself. You can do this activity yourself before the school year begins, okay? We all can own our attitude. We all know things will happen. What are those things and what are we going to do to try to mitigate, to solve whatever those problems are? The outcome is to problem solve, not problem cause. You might find another problem along the way that you have to solve, but being proactive rather than reactive is so much better. And it helps students to self-regulate and yourselves and parents and schools emotional actions and reactions. It also teaches students and humans, all of us, how to interact with others. So we think about, okay, so here's the problem. Here are the stakeholders, the people who are involved. What might they do that is a challenge? What can I do to solve or help solve whatever the challenge is? We're not expecting students to solve all the problems, but we're expecting them to think of ways that they could be part of a solution. Make sense? And lastly, do all things with purpose. Send a clear message with that purpose. And this activity, I think, is so valuable at the start of a school year. And if we have to change from being at a distance to face-to-face, or if we find that that's the right way to go, or face-to-face to at a distance, or we're hybrid, we need to make this our place. And that is the Make Our Place plan. We create a safe environment in our classroom and what we ideally hope for our classroom to look like, no matter where we're at. We will introduce and reinforce clear basic communication, expectations for everyone. Less is more, so you don't need this litany, this huge list of don't do this and don't do this and don't do this. Maybe we should have do statements. Do this. Seek to understand. Listen to others. Set goals. Look for something good in every day. Focus, though, as we're teaching students to make this Our Place plan, which they can actually write down. Have them write it down. Have them draw what they think their classroom should look like, how they'd like things to be set up. Listen to them. Let them have some ownership in the classroom, and I think you will find them to be much more engaged and interested. And that student who's really disconnected, connect with them, reach out, ask them, okay, so you don't like this setup. What can we do? Individually, you may have to problem solve with them, but give them some opportunity to share. Focus on them having a purpose, not just emotion, not seeking to cause a problem, but to solve a problem. Using good voice tone, okay, level, speed, their eye contact, their word choice, and their body language. Because in all situations, we use those things, and we often use them ineffectively. They are misunderstood, they raise the level of anxiety, and they cause more problems. We can use this time with everything that's going on. If we, as adults, can model talking to parents, talking to community members, talking to one another, and talking to our students, we can model a whole new way of communicating effectively. It has existed. It's not like it's a brand new creation, but we've lost some of that through the use, unfortunately, I'm going to say this, with technology. We've lost some of that face-to-face, eye contact, voice, tone level inflection through things like texting and at a distance items. I'm not saying that they're bad, but I'm saying that we have an opportunity to reconnect our communities using effective communication strategies and activities like the ones that I just shared. So what challenges do we face when communicating with others? You remember things like group dynamics, lack of time, lack of interest, lack of respect, lack of understanding. And what are what I call overcomer opportunities? They're the things that I just shared with you. Have a clear purpose. Clearly have your students learn how to communicate. Have them gain perspective by focusing on their perceptions and what they believe about themselves. Be personable and professional with your students. Be appropriately professional. Listen to them, teach them to be professional, and listen to others. Be proactive, not reactive. Strive to be a problem solver. Teach them the skills necessary to assess the situation and come up with viable options to solve a problem. Start with a small problem that you know they can handle, and then build up to a larger problem based on the age of your student. And of course, as a model, to be an overcomer of challenges with communication, express positivity. Attitude is a choice. Please teach your students that. Their choice, they always have tied to attitude. If you guys have any questions, feel free to message me, to send me a chat, contact me. I do want to share with you that I have a new book out called Fostering a Sense of Belonging in the Classroom. It is on Amazon.com. It also comes from my original text that you see in the bottom corner as well as in my hands, called Culture, Community, and Communication, Fostering a Sense of Belonging. And this was originally written for businesses and organizations and school leaders. And then I had teachers reach out to me about how can we do this in the classroom. Some of the things that I talked about today, particularly the different things like gaining perspective and listening to others, being professional and personable, they're considered my cornerstones of culture, community, and communication. So if you're interested, there's more information in these two books, and you can find them on Amazon.com. You can also contact me through email at dr.rebecca.spielman@gmail.com. You can also find me on Facebook and Twitter at Rebecca J. Spielman, EDD, or on my YouTube channel at ATCE, All Things Considered Education, which is now also a Facebook page. Thank you so much for choosing to teach our future and to work with our families. I hope you have a fantastic 2020-2021 academic year. And if I can do anything to help you, your schools, your community, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. Thank you so much and have a fantastic day.